Hi, this is Alex Behrens with Maple Leaf Coffee Roasters in Roselle. I'm here today to talk about the March Club coffee for us, a great Magero type coffee from El Salvador. Check it out. So as a reminder, the Coffee Club is a program that we do here at Maple Leaf Roasters that gives folks a chance to try a different coffee every month, choose one of three different roast types for that coffee, and get a bunch of extra information and detail about the way the coffee is roasted, how it tastes, and if there's extra quantity available, they can buy an extra bag as well. It's a really fun program that allows people to do some exploration, try some different coffees, and some really interesting things that they might not try normally if they were just to buy some stuff off our shelves. So if you're interested in this program, feel free to check a link on our website for more information and shoot us a note if you're interested to sign up and get on the waiting list when we have an open slot for it too. So this month we have a coffee from El Salvador, and this coffee is a so-called Magero type coffee, and I'm doing a bad job of pronouncing that. The coffee name and the video title will be there. I would encourage you to take a look and do some research on your own. But these are fun coffee beans that are really quite large, actually. It's a different strain of a Typica coffee bean that actually is very, very large, and I'll put a picture in the video to show a coffee from El Salvador, also a dark roast, next to the same coffee from this club's dark roast version. This coffee is not super highly produced. You will see it in different parts of the world come out. It's a little bit hard to grow, and usually the flavors of these types of coffees generally tend to be on the lower acidity side, not always really well taken care of in terms of the way that they're grown either. So it's hard to find one that tastes really good or has something interesting or unique going on into it. And this is one that I think, being an El Salvador coffee, has some fun exotic flavors to go along with the different characteristics that this kind of coffee will introduce to the roast overall. So this month, because of that larger bean that can be a particularly difficult coffee to roast, the size of the bean plays a big impact on how easy or how hard it is to roast a coffee. A smaller bean coffee will be difficult to roast because it takes on heat very differently. It will probably roast a little bit less even and just not be something that is easy to get a consistent appearance to when you're roasting, especially if you roast it too light. Whereas these larger beans, they will take a little bit more energy, more heat required to get them to a final stage. So for every roast this month, what I had to do was to be a bit more aggressive about the way that the heat was applied to the roast in order to get it to the final stage that I wanted to. And sometimes the risk you run with having an aggressive approach to the heat is that you can end up with a coffee that is a little bit burned or brittle or dry tasting at the end. And so that's just something that's really, really difficult to make work for larger bean coffees, but you can get it right if you put some energy into it for sure. So this month we have pretty conventional roast technique for me on this one. Like I said, the only change that I made to the way that this was roasted versus a regular coffee was that I was a bit more aggressive about the amount of heat that I was applying towards it for both the light, medium, and dark. So coffees from El Salvador generally tend to be more on the sweeter side of things, lower acidity, kind of a brown sugar tint to them. We have a single origin coffee from El Salvador right now on the shelf that we've roasted as a dark roast, has kind of a graham cracker tint to it. And this one on the dark roast form has some of that same characteristics as well. So starting out with the light roast, this month it has kind of a caramely, chocolatey feel to it. Has a kind of an earthy, veggie feel to it at points in some of the scents in your nose. One little interesting quirk that I saw in this when I was sniffing the grounds themselves was it kind of had that feeling of when you were a kid, if you're opening up a bag of Fruit Loops or Fruity Pebbles. Had a mild fruitiness to it that was sort of like a comical fruity almost. I think it's kind of tough. You don't sense it right away. But if you kind of smell the coffee a couple times, and if you taste it a couple times and really go looking for it, it's got a weird kind of fruit characteristic to it that I think, like I said, reminds me a lot of like a bag of Fruity Pebbles or Fruit Loops, which is kind of an interesting scent to get. Overall, it still had kind of that El Salvador speed to it, the kind of cinnamon, brown sugar, light flavors. Kind of had like a tea sensibility to it too. It didn't have a super strong finish to it in the light roast, but definitely had a little bit of like a tiny bite. And I think this is because of the variety of coffee. Each of the three roasts had a kind of a little bit of an herbal spice kick to it, very similar to what we'd see out of a pea berry coffee. I like the light roast quite a bit here. I think because of that fruity factor for me, that kind of thing really hits home and is something that I think is like a fun novelty if you go looking for it. So that might be my favorite this month. On the medium roast side of things, it turned a little more mellow, a little easier going. Kind of that brown sugar tone came out a bit stronger than in the light roast form. It definitely had a richness to it. So this one on the medium side kind of had a thicker mouthfeel to it overall. Not that the light roast was thin in comparison, but it just didn't have the same level of coating that you would get when you kind of have that sip and we wait for it to finish. It still lingered with you quite a bit. It also had a little bit of like a white chocolate kind of tone to it as well. A little bit of a lemony, buttery hint also. Nice complexity to the medium roast. I think of the three coffees, this is the one that you kind of got the most range of flavor out of. And depending on how hot the coffee was when you would drink it, when you brewed the coffee, you're going to get something that will taste a little bit different every sip of the way through that. So I like the medium roast too. I think still compared to the light roast, it just didn't have the same kind of quirkiness to it. But if you're a person that tends to enjoy just a nice rounded, even-going, easygoing medium roast, this might be a really good choice for you this month. On the dark roast side of things, we saw a lot of the conventional dark roast characteristics that you expect out of any dark roasted coffee: a heaviness, a maltiness, something that's a little bit heavier on the palate overall. It had definitely a lingering taste of all the three, as you would expect. This is the one that kind of stuck in your mouth after you swallowed it, and it just didn't go anywhere for a little while. One fun characteristic of this coffee overall, it did at points remind me of some of these Sumatran coffees that we've had in the shop before. Occasionally we'll get a Sumatra coffee that if you roast it dark enough, takes on kind of like a burnt sugar tone to it. I also got like a kind of a burnt oat kind of feel to this one as well. So at points, there were times when I was drinking the dark roast that I kind of felt like I might just also be finishing some oatmeal that I might have made on the stove instead of a microwave. So something where like the oats kind of burned themselves to the bottom of that pan, and as a consequence, you had like a roasty sort of feel to that dark roast that just was quite fun to enjoy. It still had a kind of a chocolatiness to it that you saw in the medium roast as well, but this time it was more of a dry cocoa powder sort of feel to it. That kind of coupled with that sort of like toasty, oaty sort of feel, I think is really kind of an interesting flavor. I think if you're a person that wants to try something that has a bit of character to it for a dark roast, that has that introduction, maybe you've never tried a coffee that has like a toasty kind of oat sort of taste to it, this might be a really fun coffee to try this month. And I think that the dark roast won't scare anyone away that has a sensitive stomach or is normally like not going for a dark roast itself. So I think all three coffees this month have something really unique and interesting to offer. And I look forward to seeing which ones folks go with this month. We will have this coffee very soon. And I hope to see you on again for another great club coffee next month. Take care.